You can execute well, keep your customer acquisition cost low, have solid unit economics, and build a system that converts and still hit a growth ceiling. Because every new customer only comes when you pay for them. In my marketing career, I have watched businesses pour millions into acquisitions while building zero advantage. They grow, then plateau, and then they struggle. Because nothing builds on itself and every quarter starts from zero. Today in this video, I want to break down the letter A in the signal framework, and A stands for advantage. And this is the question we want to answer. What gets better over time without adding more spend? Because if everything you do requires spending more next month, you do not have a business, you just have an expensive treadmill. There are two ways to grow, and most businesses default to the first one because it's predictable, measurable, and fast, but it never gets easier. You pay for ads, you get customers, the ads stop, and the customers stop. Next month, you start over. Same cost, same effort. Now this works, and a lot of billion-dollar companies are built this way, but it does not add up. The second method is building assets that grow with time, that add up. You invest once, the asset grows, it attracts customers without ongoing spend. Next month, it's easier. Next year, it's exponential, and this is advantage. Businesses that plateau rent everything, and businesses that scale, they build compounding assets. Now you need both, but most businesses are doing 90% rent and 10% own. That ratio needs to flip. So what actually adds up in marketing? Let me break down the 5 assets I look for when I audit a business. The first asset is the distribution you own. Your email list, maybe your podcast audience, YouTube subscribers, the community. Every new subscriber makes the next launch easier and the asset grows. Here is an example of a rented one, paid ads, and that becomes zero every month, same cost per customer. But something you own, for example, an email list with 100,000 engaged subscribers. Let me give you an example of a recent business I worked with. Now, this SaaS company had 180,000 email subscribers built over 4 years. Every product launch generated anywhere between $400,000 to $600,000 in revenue from email alone, without any ad spend. The competitor did not have an optimized email list, and that's why every launch required around $80,000 in paid ads to hit the same number. And over time, this gap widened. The company with own distribution could launch faster, cheaper, and more frequently. And that's the compounding advantage. They invested in building the list once, and now it pays dividends every single launch. The second asset is brand equity. People recognize your name. They trust you before they meet you. Word of mouth kicks in, and referrals happen without prompting. Your customer acquisition cost drops because people search for you by name instead of discovering you through ads. Branded search typically converts at 3 to 5 times the rate of non-branded search, and it costs around 60 to 80% less per click. If 40% of your traffic is branded search, your blended CAC is dramatically lower than competitors relying on cold paid ads. Brand is not just awareness, it's an asset that reduces your cost of acquisition every month. The third asset is content and SEO, or search engine optimization. A library of content that ranks, attracts traffic month after month. Each new piece builds domain authority, and traffic adds up over time. Again, a rented idea would be a paid search ads. You get the same traffic every month for the same spend. But if you have 200 articles that you own that drives 50,000 organic visits monthly, you're doing something right. I saw a B2B company publish 3 articles per week for 18 months. In the first year, they had 8,000 organic visitors per month. Second year, they grew this to 35,000 organic visits per month. And by year 3, they were hitting 92,000 organic visitors per month. Same content investment, but compounding traffic. The competitor ran a lot of paid ads, same spend every month, same traffic every month, but there was no compounding. Here is what most people miss about content. It's not just about marketing, it's asset building. Every piece you publish becomes a part of a library that works for you forever. Evergreen content. Every new customer makes the product more valuable for existing customers. The retention improves, the acquisition cost drops because customers invite others. Think of Slack, Notion, Calendly. These products get better as more people use them. And they have built-in viral loops. Customers invite teammates who invite other teams who invite other companies. Here is the math I want you to look into. If 20% of your new customers come from referrals, and those referrals also refer another 20%, you have a compounding loop. So on month 1, you have 100 customers that you acquire, maybe 80 paid and 20 from referral sources. By month 6, you have 100 customers again that you acquired, 60 paid, but this time you got 40 from referral sources. And by year 1, again the same 100 customers, you have 45 paid, but 55 coming from referral sources. In this case, your customer acquisition cost drops by 40% without changing your paid strategy. Not every product can build network effects, but if yours can, it's the most powerful compounding asset. Every campaign teaches you something. You get better at targeting, messaging, creative. And this drops your CAC and improves your conversion rate. And this way your efficiency adds up. A company I work with tracked every campaign's performance by audience segment, their messaging angle, and creative type. Over 2 years, they built a database of what worked. In the first year, their customer acquisition cost was $850. Second year, they reduced it to $620. They were using the same channels, but they got better at targeting and creative. And in the third year, their customer acquisition cost dropped to $480. Same budget, better results. That's a learning loop. Most businesses run campaigns, look at the results, and move on. But the best companies systematically capture what they learn and use it to get better every month. And that knowledge adds up. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. I worked with a B2B company spending around $200,000 per month on paid ads. Their customer acquisition cost was $800. Efficient for the market, and they were growing around 25% year on year. The board was happy and the team was executing well. But when I dug deeper, this is what I saw. They had zero organic traffic. There was no search engine optimization, no content library. They had zero brand equity. No one actually searched for their name. And they had zero own distribution. They had a small email list with no audience. That means 100% of the customers were coming from paid ads. So the growth was linear, predictable, but very much capped. Every month, same spend, same number of customers, no growth built on itself. So here is what we did. We shifted 30% of the budget, that's around $60,000 per month, from paid ads into assets that kept generating demand and revenue over time. Specifically, we invested in content and SEO. We did email nurture sequences, and we did weekly newsletter for their ICP, and we had a customer referral program. Here was the important part. In the first year, growth slowed to 18%, and the board was nervous. Because we were in the investment phase, we were spending less on paid ads and more on assets that built value over time. But we stuck with it. In the second year, the growth jumped to 45% because the long-term investment started paying off. The organic traffic grew from 2,000 to 35,000 every month, and the email list grew from 8,000 to 40,000 subscribers. The referral rates grew from 3% to 22% of new customers, and the blended CAC, or customer acquisition cost, dropped from $800 to around $520. They were no longer paying for every customer. They had built assets that kept generating growth over time. And by the third year, the growth was 60% annually on the same marketing budget. And that's the difference between renting and owning. Renting gives you predictable linear growth, but owning gives you compounding exponential growth. But you have to be patient. It can take 12 to 18 months before you see the real impact. Here is something that I want you to understand. A better product does not always win, but better distribution does. I have watched superior products lose to inferior ones with better distribution every single time. Why is it so? Because somebody can replicate your product. Your competitor can copy the features in 6 to 12 months. Even they can copy the price. They can either match you or undercut you. Even a brand is replicable if they're willing to spend enough. But what about distribution? That takes years to build and it adds up. Microsoft did not have the best browser in the late 90s, but they had distribution. Internet Explorer came pre-installed on every Windows machine. They owned the distribution, so they won. Salesforce was not the best CRM when they launched, but they had distribution, a direct sales army, a partner ecosystem, app exchange. They could reach more customers faster, and that's why they won. Likewise, HubSpot was not the best marketing automation platform, but they had distribution, 10 years of content, massive organic traffic, and brand equity. They owned the inbound channel, and that's why they won. Distribution beats product quality every single time. If you cannot reach customers efficiently, the product quality is not going to matter. If your customer can reach them faster, cheaper, or at scale, they will win. Distribution is the only moat that's hard to replicate. So how do you know if you're building advantage or just renting growth? Here are the questions I ask when I audit a company. What percentage of your customers come from owned assets versus rented attention? If it's 90% rented, say paid ads, you have no compounding advantage. Aim for at least 30 to 40% from owned assets within 2 years. Do you have all 5 compounding assets? Distribution, brand equity, content SEO, network effects, and learning loops? Most businesses have 1 or 2, but the best have all 5 of these. Is your customer acquisition cost flat, rising, or declining over the past 1 year? If it's growing, you're fighting saturation, and you need compounding assets to offset that. If your CAC is flat or declining, something is compounding, probably your brand or SEO. What happens if you pause your paid ads for 30 days? Does revenue drop to 0? Or do your own assets such as your SEO, your email, your referrals sustain some growth? And this tells you how dependent you are on renting. And the last question is, are you building assets that will be more valuable in the next 2 years or 3 years? Or you are just renting the same attention every month? If you're not building, you are capped. Here is what I want you to remember. Renting work, it's predictable and it's measurable and it's fast, but it does not add up or compound. Building advantage is slower, it's less predictable, and it requires patience. But once it compounds, growth accelerates without linear spend increases. The businesses that scale sustainably do not just optimize acquisition, they build compounding assets, distribution they own, brand equity, content libraries, network effects, and learning loops. Now these take time, but they are the only things that create sustainable competitive advantage. Ask yourself, what percentage of your customers come from assets you own versus attention you rent? If it's 90% rented, you have no advantage, and growth will always feel like you're pushing a boulder uphill. And this is an advantage issue, it's not a channel issue. If you want to audit your compounding assets, I have built a framework called the Advantage Assessment. It walks you through the 5 asset types and helps you identify which you are building versus renting. I'll drop the link in the description below. Have a beautiful day.